All right. Good evening, everybody. We're getting situated here. Glad to have each of you all with us tonight. I see that there are a number of folk who are gathering, and we're excited about that. Want to welcome you to tonight's webinar. Our presenter is going to be Steve Ruff. And many of you all know Steve Ruff. He's a friend of so many of ours. As he is getting himself together and as we are prepared to get started, let me show you a couple of things. I want to remind you that this presentation is being sponsored by the Elders of Excellence Fellowship, and they have opened these webinars up to everyone who is interested in sharpening their ministries, going to a whole nother level. This will be, though, the last month when everyone will have free and unlimited access to the recordings. At the end of this month, these webinars will be directed toward the Elders of Excellence members. And so we want you to jump on board, become an Elders of Excellence Fellowship member. Tonight, I want to show you what's going on. Tonight, of course, Steve Ruff is going to be doing our presentation, How a Small Church is Doing Big Ministry in the Atlanta area. On next Tuesday, Patty Conwell, one of the adjunct professors at Oakwood, is going to be doing a presentation called 10 Secrets to a Successful Speech. That thing is good. She gave us kind of the big picture last month, and now she's going to be drilling down a bit. This presentation is primarily targeting those who are not in full-time pastoral ministry, but you are an elder, you might be a church leader, you're up quite a bit, and you want to understand basic principles of public speech. It's also good for those pastors who want to kind of go back to the basics. But if you have moved beyond basic principles of public speech, the end of this month, there's going to be a presentation that's entitled Decoding the Message. And let me tell you something. If you have been with us the last couple of months and you've heard Morris and Gamal Alexander, I know that you have been blessed. I mean, the brothers have been good. I've been preaching for years, but every time they do a presentation, it does something notes away with me. And so all of this month, we're going to have exciting webinars for you as the Elders of Excellence Fellowship continues to present these free offers. And so I'll say a little bit more about that as we move forward. But I want to go ahead and get started with our presenter tonight, Steve Ruff. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, man. I can't see you. That might not be a bad thing, but go ahead.
Can you see me now?
Can you see me now? That's major, baby. That's major, baby. I got you. Okay. Oh, let me say one more thing, Steve, just before you get started. I want to remind everybody that this is a Zoom webinar. It's not a Zoom meeting. And so there's so many of you that are already on and others will be coming on. It's impossible for us to get everybody asking questions audibly at the same time, but we do want to field your questions. And so if you have a question, put it in the chat feature. If you have a question, put it in the Q&A field, and my student assistant, Christian Lawson from Atlanta, is going to be getting those things to us, and we'll try to get as many questions to Bishop Ruff as we can. It's your time, bro.
All right. Good evening, everybody. It is, you'll need to make sure you have made me host so that I can share my screen.
You got it. I got you. Okay.
I'm just delighted. Thank you, Jesse, for the invitation to be here and to share tonight. And I'm both excited. And I hope that somebody is blessed by what transpires tonight. I'm going to get right into sharing my screen with you tonight as we begin to talk about doing ministry in a crisis. Certainly, we recognize that we're in the midst of a crisis right now, and how to handle, how to manage, and so forth. I'm sure that I'm talking to several people who know the deal on handling and managing situations, and so um, my my little ministry, Next Level Ministry, wants to share with you this format on doing church in a ministry crisis. Um,
Bishop, why don't you, I've been down there, and let me just say from the outset that Steve Ruff is a long-standing friend of mine, and we talk every week. And he has really been a blessing to my ministry. I preached for him on a number of occasions, and vice versa. So if we have to move into a second webinar, we're already making plans for it. We always go for a little short of an hour to make sure that we have questions and answers given to the host. But I'm just telling you, if we run over, don't worry about it. We'll go into another webinar next month. But why don't you just tell them a little bit about yourself, Steve, and where you're pastoring right now?
All right. Okay, Jesse, I'm in metropolitan Atlanta, Georgia. I pastor the First Riverdale Seventh-day Adventist Church, just a little bit southwest of the airport, and there we have a member on the books. We have about 312 members on the books, but attending membership somewhere around 75, 85, with gusts up to 125 every now and then. And it is I have 19 different nationalities in this little small church, and it's a church that's been in existence for about 17 years, and a lot of the people there are longtime Seventh-day Adventists, and you have a few who are new to Adventism, and so there's a whole lot of dynamic that's very interesting inside of this little body. A wonderful group of people, but critically dynamic. They are interesting. But this ideal of crisis, I want to throw that at you, because I went to look up crisis, and it said a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger. And then I went down to the synonyms, and it started saying catastrophe, calamity, cataclysm, emergency, disaster. And I went through those. And then I went down to hardship and adversity, pickle, jam, sticky situation, and hot water. And the next one really got me, hell. And then hell on earth. And I said to myself, wow, but when I look at the description of crisis, according to Wikipedia here, it seems like the regular, normal life and existence of a pastor.
Mercy.
You're either coming out of one or going in one. And I mean, it's just every day. You have church, you have adjustments, you have changes, you have board meetings, you have finance committee meetings, you have people who are there. Crisis never ceases to take place. So crisis is normal. Now, you might have a crisis that takes it up a notch. And I think that this pandemic has taken it up a notch, because there are a number of things that I am experiencing now that I really didn't intend to experience, but the crisis has created a need for an adjustment. Just in the word, just for a second. Genesis 22:1, it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham. Abraham was in a crisis, and he had been in crisis before. One in chapter 12 of Genesis, when he left his family and all of those he loved. The other one when he got down to Egypt, and another one when it took so long for all of that stuff to happen. But in the culmination of all of this is transpiring here in the 22nd book of Genesis. Now, I want to define for you the top three major requirements that you're going to need in a crisis. You're gonna need this, and I'm experiencing it right now. Work, okay? I'm a pretty hard worker, okay? But you're gonna need to work. But then crisis like this, it's taken up to another notch because it's changing so many things. We used to do church at church.
Yeah.
We're not doing church at church, but we're still doing church.
Yeah.
And so I've had to change so many things, and it's working me a whole lot harder and more consistently than I have worked before. And the third one, just take it to a whole nother level. You're going to need more hard work.
More hard work.
Yeah, you're going to have more hard work. I have never worked this hard in my life. Many of you would never know this unless I tell you, but I spent 11 years working on my daddy's garbage truck. Mm-hmm. And after this pandemic started going on, I thought about going back and asking him if I could sign back up. This thing is crazy. And what you will come to know is the intensity gets greater and greater and greater. Okay? What we fail to do in the time of peace, y'all know the answer. We're gonna have to do it in a time of trouble.
Right.
And I am telling you now, a whole lot of us are looking forward to the time when we can get back to where some things were. I don't know if we're going back.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I will appreciate back, but I don't see back on the horizon. Uh-huh. I see that it's gonna get tough. I put this little slide in here, give me a break, because my brother called me. He says, man, this pandemic is giving you a break, man. You're at home. And man, I had to catch myself. Because I am working harder than I've ever worked. And he thinks I'm just at home.
Right.
And I'm sure the same is true for a whole lot of us. Now, there are a lot of people who are used to the tech thing and all of that kind of stuff, but I haven't been there, okay? Doing church in a crisis, the mindset, your mindset before a crisis will generally kind of set the tone for how you will respond in a crisis. Your mindset, okay? Your work ethic, that's gonna set the tone, because there's some people they're gonna, well, I'm home, I'm gonna lay it back. But yeah, your work ethic is gonna define this. Your commitment, your dedication, it's gonna be defined whenever a crisis shows up. And it's not just this pandemic, it's any crisis. Some of them don't have the urgency of this one, nor the catastrophic loss of this one, but there are crises that we deal with on a regular and a consistent basis. You get a chance now to see the passion for your ministry. And here, this is going to tell whether you're going to leap off and see to it that things are going to happen in a way that you know you've got to make them happen, or you just going to kind of lay back and kind of wait and see what's going to happen. Mm. You will be you. Mm. I know Dr. Wilson always talks about be you. When he says that, he's talking about don't be somebody else. Mm. But in this situation, you are going to be you. And whatever you are before the crisis comes, it only heightens it. It puffs it up. It blows it up. You're going to be you. The mindset of the next level. Next level for evangelism, next level for church growth, next level for the worship experience, next level for faithfulness and giving and member involvement, church involvement, expansion, community impact. You are going to be you, but I'm going to tell you that when this pandemic hit, I hit my knees. And I said, God, I mean, being out of the church and working on this technology thing, you know, I'll hit some of that. But I got down on my knees because I could see some things were changing and adjusting. And I said, I'm gonna have to make some adjustments here. My prayer, here's my prayer. God, in this mess, please take us to the next level in the midst of this crisis. Mm-hmm. You're more powerful than this, and you're bigger than this. Mm-hmm. And let me lead, let me be your leader for guiding your people to the next level. That was my prayer by the grace of God. And I can tell you the crisis is merely an unveiling of your leadership prowess, your leadership skill, the investment that you have. Are you a leader as a developer of the gifts of leaders? Are you bringing your people with you in this process? Are you opening the avenues where you're setting up the opportunity not only for the leaders, but the members to grow and that kind of thing. Now, your leadership style in the midst of a crisis is going to be huge. This is serious evaluation time for you, because there's some things that you probably have been holding on to. There's some things that you will actually need to let go. You'll need to make some adjustments from as being a delegator more than a micromanager.
Hey, Steve, give me an example. Give me an example. If you're talking about being you, doing you, and yeah, we talk about that a lot, essentially meaning that you are who you are at your core. God's always evolving us in a spiritual way, but there's certain things about us that are long-standing that we need to be honest and open about, those good things and those bad things. We're looking at some possible challenges to our leadership style in times of peace that we might need to at least acknowledge and ask God to adjust in a crisis. So give me an example of you got delegator. I'm assuming that in a time of crisis, what you've seen is a need to do more delegation than you would in a normal church setting.
Right. And the challenge that I have is, so when I ask the question, all right, we've got to deal with some food crisis that we've got going. Do I have somebody who is going to help me here? And man, it's silence for about the space of several hours. Okay, nobody's saying anything, and so I say, all right, Elder, I'm gonna ask you to handle this one, and let's stay in touch. But here's some things that we'll need to do, and that kind of thing. I've got to. In my church, I'm a small church, but I'm in a church where people are either fatigued, tired, they're upset, angry, or mad. So a lot of people, I've had people to offices and they quit.
Yeah, you're in a regular church. Go ahead.
I'm in a regular church. So I am the personal ministries director, and I am the community service leader, and I'm the women's ministry leader. Not because they have elected me for that, but because I don't have anybody in that area. I don't have the children's ministry. So I have to find people and say, okay, I'm leading this area, but I need you here, and I need you to do this. And I need them to take front stage to get it done, because I got a lot of people, they want to stay in the background, but I got to put them out there because there's so many other areas that I am responsible for. And I got to let them go. I got to let them make some mistakes. I got to let them, I got to cease to be a stage hog, and I got to help them to come along with me in that process. This is not only an important crisis, is not going to be only an important opportunity for your own personal development, but the development of your leadership and of your members.
Have you found some of them that stepped up? I mean, have some of them stood out in ways that you didn't anticipate?
Well, I've had a few of them. I've had a few of them who have taken charge of a couple of things. It's interesting. It's interesting that the county of Clayton County here in metropolitan Atlanta has come to our little old bitty church. We're one of the smaller churches in the county, and they have asked us to partner with the county and include all the other faith-based churches and do a feeding program for the county for their homeless, and now for the people who are unemployed and so forth.
Hold on. That's one of the things I heard about the church that just absolutely blew my mind. I've been there, and I mean, it's a vibrant church, but it's not a big church. Why did they choose you guys to lead out in a ministry that was that impacting?
Well, they chose this church because it's the Seventh-day Adventist church, and the Seventh-day Adventist church has a history in this arena. The Seventh-day Adventist church has they have clout with a number of the food banks and so forth. The largest program in metropolitan Atlanta is the Berean Seventh-day Adventist Church, and there are several others out there like Maranatha and West End, where they're doing some feeding and so forth, but they're not in Clayton County. But we are in Clayton County. So based on what God has done for the Adventist church, they have chosen this Adventist church, even though it's a small church and and they have agreed to step up to the plate to see to make sure that we are going to be successful in this process. And we'll have to pull some other resources. And the one thing about it is the commissioner says to me, he says, listen, I need some of your people to be there, but don't worry if you don't have enough. He says, because I'll get the people to help put the thing together. I just want you to lead the process. I think that's a marvel. And here I am seeing the members of the church step up because they not only see the need for this, but they also have an interest. And we have a number of people in our own church who have those same kinds of needs. I'll share some of that with you in just a little bit. All right. Priority number one in this crisis, and this crisis is a little different than we have ever seen, than I've ever experienced as a pastor. Priority number one is activating the membership to meet the needs of the body. Okay, you've got to make sure that your members are taken care of. That's priority number one. Okay, caring for the members, ensuring a safety in a crisis, making sure that they're safe, and we still have church every Sabbath at the church, and there are only about 6 or 8 of us who are actually at the church when we have service. And there are other people, they're just so ingrained to go in there that they just want to be there. But we're encouraging them to stay safe, stay inside, especially if you're in those vulnerable categories and you have, your age. 80% of my church, senior citizens, okay? 80% senior citizens. And I am telling you that they're dear, sweet people, but we want to make sure that they are safe. Meeting the needs of, do the members have food? Uh-huh. We have several of them. We have been going to pick up food. We have places where we can pick up food, and we can make sure that our members have food to eat. So we want to make sure that they have food in their house. And we will call them, we will check on them, but to make sure. Then we have done the food distribution.
Who is we, Steve?
Pardon me?
Who is we?
Well, myself with another deacon and another member. We have been distributing the food. Okay. Let me give you another example. Making sure that some of our seniors who can't get out, some of them have medical appointments. They aren't able. They're struggling. So EMS told this woman who's on dialysis that they can't come pick her up because they have no way to get in the house and get her out of the house. She's just a little heavy, well, a lot heavy, but they can't get in. So the members of the church went over and built the ramp.
Oh, mercy.
And EMS says, we want to know about the church that came and built this ramp. We not only built the ramp, we paid for the ramp. And it didn't really come out of the church. It came out of the elders and deacons' pocket. We built this ramp, and I will tell you, it has made a difference not only in that community but in the hospital where she goes on a regular basis. We want to make sure that our members have heating and cooling and proper ventilation so that they have so that they're cared for in that regard. And then we want to make sure that our members have the opportunity to grow spiritually in faith and in courage. And that's one of the key pieces that I have a responsibility, is making sure that our elders and our deacons stay strong in faith and courage while we're in a crisis and a challenge. I've got to remind them that God is in charge. He's in control. I've got to remind them that we're going to be all right. I got to remind them Psalms 91, none shall come nigh thy dwelling. He is going to care for you. And then I've got to encourage them in the area of faithfulness. Okay. Then I got to talk about holding the members. This is big for me because I'm a lifelong Seventh-day Adventist. I mean, my parents were Adventists, and so I grew up in the Adventist church and so forth. So everything evolved on being at the church. But this time, you have to hold the members, but you don't get to see them. Mm-hmm. And you have to hold the members, and you don't get the opportunity to hug them and all of that kind of stuff. And so we took and I should have done this a long time ago. So the pandemic is really helping me. I divided that membership up with elder teams.
How many elders did you have? How many? Let's talk about the elders. As a matter of fact, let's take a break because we got a question.
Okay.
We're about midway through.
Okay.
And we still got plenty of time because we got some questions. Want to remind everybody that, again, this is a Zoom webinar, not a Zoom meeting. We want to get your questions, and we have a couple, and we want you to use the chat feature. Use the chat feature, and we'll get your questions. You can also use the Q&A feature for your questions. Also, a reminder that this is a webinar that is sponsored by the Elders of Excellence Fellowship. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for doing this. This is the last month when people outside of the membership will have free access. So please, I'm gonna get my assistant Christian to just throw in the chat feature the link so that you can become an official part of the fellowship, and you'll have unlimited access to all of these webinars. The recording is gonna be ready within an hour of this presentation. And if you are a fellowship member, we're going to be giving you those recordings. Steve, you mentioned something earlier, and there's a question that's come up about it. You know what? I'm going to hold this question because I see where you're going, and I think it might be a little bit better as we move forward. A couple of these questions. Go ahead.
All right. Well, you asked me a question. I have 4 elders. I have another 3 in the church who used to be elders, but they said, hasta la vista, baby. Okay, what do you get when you take the L off of lover? It's over, baby. So they're out of there. So I have 4 elders. Actually, let me see. Yeah, I have 4 elders, and then I bring the deacon along. So I pair with one of them, and then we have 3 teams. But it's perfect because you can't see me now, but I have my list, and everybody has their list. And I divide that team up, and I deal now in the crisis. I only deal with the attending memberships and the regular attending friends and guests. They're all on the list, even the ones that aren't members. I mean, they belong to us, even though they're not members. And so they're on that list, and we work with them. We stay with them. And I want to be clear here that I am mindful that the rest of the members they must be included in this process, but that's in time. But in the crisis, I got to get past where we can stabilize before we can begin to work with the rest of the list. Those members on that list should be called at least every 7 to 14 days to touch bases with them. Okay. Not only that, if there are any special needs, we need to report it. And as in the case of that ramp that we needed to build, so if there's an issue, then we move in. We will do everything that we can to make sure that these kinds of matters are handled, are cared for, and the rest of that. Okay, and then we want to build some faithfulness and service. Crisis time is not a time for laying down. It's a time for stepping up. Crises are created to stimulate us to do more and to do better. Okay, the elders are suggested to be, okay, Pastor, you're asking for a whole lot here, because I'm asking them to ensure that all of the members on their list are able to get online. They're there for prayer services and so forth, and they're doing a wonderful job. We had our elders meeting last night. We went through every name on that list, and we will go through that list every other week. We'll go through other items on the agenda. On the off week, we weren't meeting, but every other week before that. But right now, we got to make sure the members are cared for, and we still have to take care of the business of the church. They got to know who is and who's not online for all services, which means that they got to be there.
I don't understand. Say it again now.
They like we're having Zoom church.
Right.
They need to know who on their list is there and who's not there.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they said, Pastor, how are we supposed to know? The same way I know. Look at those phone numbers and see if your people are there. Okay. Find out those devices with those funny names. You're going to have to find out, call them, check on them. But you have to know if they're on. And if they're going someplace else, okay, but you got to make sure that they are in service, being served, or whatever the case is. I am suggesting to you, it's not just work and it's not just hard work. It's more hard work. It's more intense. It's more consistent. And it just keeps going. Holding the members. Now, this has ramped up for me. I mean, I have a communications director, but there are days when my communications director doesn't communicate. And so since we have been out of the church, which I think, what's this, about 12 weeks that we've been out of the church, I've got to find a way to make sure that our people are still in service online and so forth. So communication with the folk, and I'm not a designer, but I'll put something together to make sure that to make sure this will go out every Sabbath since we have been out of the church. One of these flyers is going out, and somebody is going to get this. I have phone numbers and I have email addresses. And I've never done this before, but this is something that I will do on a regular basis. I will stay in communication with these folks. This was last week for Mother's Day. We had our little Mother's Day, which was just really a wonderful experience. And not because I preached, but before I came to preach, Vandion Griffin came in, who's a member of our church, and gave a powerful tribute to the mothers and so forth. And see this, a message from the pastor. This letter goes out every week. I've had the one I'm getting ready to do is my 12th letter. This is not something I've ever done. I mean, we do a bulletin, we put announcements in there and so forth. But here, I'm trying to keep them encouraged, keep them inspired, remind them of the time, help them to get on, let them know I'm available. They can call me if they need me, whatever the case is. We are here. And I will tell you, we sent this little rose. Usually we have roses that we will pass out to the mothers on Mother's Day. I got more responses on this because we texted and emailed it to all of the mothers. And I think some men got it too, but you know, it's all right. But we got more of a response from this beautiful little rose for Mother's Day than we have gotten from the long stem roses since we have been doing roses. And I was both proud of that. The other thing is staying in touch. Getting their prayer requests, making sure their prayer requests are on that scroll, and making sure that prayer scroll can be before the people on a regular basis. And you would be surprised how many people have just an interest in you just praying for them. And let me suggest to you, now, I think we had a pretty good prayer meeting before this pandemic. I thought we had a pretty good, we would go anywhere from like 18 up to 30 people on a Wednesday night. You know, every now and again we would have a drop down to 15 or 18, but we had good numbers. Yeah. But our numbers have increased online. And I guess, you know, when people are able to be at home, to know that they can hear the word, and they can be comfortable and so forth.
How do they get on the prayer scroll, Steve? The elders are retrieving this information from them?
The elders retrieve it. We will retrieve it at prayer meeting, or we have they will text it, and we will get this information on this prayer scroll. And I will tell you, some people are sending a list. They send a list, but we won't put the list on there. But we will put their names, and on this prayer scroll, you'll see a little spot where you see a UK. That's Lord, you know, because you know. No description. Some people, we've got a lady in hospice. We have somebody who had cancer, is recovering from cancer. We have people who are dealing with anxiety and so forth. But they will get those to us. We just had this week, for the first time in our church, one of our members whose son tested positive for COVID-19, and that's a very tough thing. So his name will appear on there, not situations, not circumstances, not specifics, but the names of individuals that we are praying for. This will go out tonight. This will go out tonight to remind our members of our prayer meeting on tomorrow at 7 p.m. and we will send that out. It's going out to probably 140 to 150 people. We will have somewhere between 30 and 40 people who will come to prayer meeting, which is growth from where we were. And and we just think that the Lord is blessing us. We will distribute those quarterlies. They can drive by and pick them up at the church when we're there, or we will deliver them to them. We have some people who can't get out. We got to make sure that they are able to not only that we're communicating with them, but that they can grow spiritually and so forth. We have had some of the most powerful Sabbath school experiences. This past Sabbath was one of the best. We take tithe envelopes, offering envelopes. We will take those to the home, or we will mail them to them, or we will find a way. Faithfulness and serving and tithe and offering. Why? Because while we don't have a vaccine for this pandemic, let me tell you something. Faithfulness is the vaccine for the children of God.
I love it.
It's like the blood on the doorpost. And I'm telling them now more than ever,
Yeah.
you want to make sure that you are faithful. So we have created the means for them to be able to do tithe and offering. We do the drop off at church.
Let's back up. Let's back up. This is something that came up. I don't know. This was amazing to me. Like I said, I visited the church. It's not a large church, and it's not a church that's not without its challenges. It's a regular church. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that amazed me was the giving during the pandemic. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve. It seems like the giving has actually gone up. I'm not just talking about the first couple of weeks after they were quarantined, but it seems that the giving pattern has gone up and stayed steady. I mean, is that the case?
Well, to tell the truth, I'm
trying to tell the truth, man.
March,
I said to tell the truth. Tell the truth. Go ahead.
March was a very strong month for us. 13,000, because you know we're a small church,
right?
But April was the largest month that I have seen since I have pastored that church. They get more than 23,000 in the month of April, and already for the first 2 weeks, the giving, and when I say the giving, I'm talking about tithe and offering. Both of them are up, but I have to give credit to our elders. Our elders, they have been picking up tithe and offering, and they have been calling members to make sure that they have what they need. But also on my way to the church today, I stopped by a gentleman who lives about 5 miles from here and picked up his tithe and his offering. And he said, look, come back next week because I have more that I want to give. Last week, just from picking up tithe and offering, I know that I took more than $2,000 in tithe and offering to the church that I picked up, and I am telling you, our numbers for through April, we have already surpassed what we did through May of this year. So
now I saw we've done a couple of these, and I noticed that there were several churches that got a temporary bump. I think a lot of churches got a temporary bump. I think one of your church is one of those churches that seems to have sustained it. Do you, I think a lot of it has to do with how intentional you have been about, not just you, but you and the elders have been about going to get the money. Is that right?
Well, I think that that's a big piece of it, but I encourage them in that respect, Jesse. You know, I encourage them in that every Sabbath, every prayer meeting, I'm encouraging that. Good. But let me tell you the craziest thing that has transpired, because you know picking up offering and that kind of thing. Our online giving these last 2 months has been more than 70% of our giving.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
And I just said, wow. I mean, you know, thank you, Lord. But we will stay close to the people. And we do have that now more than ever. Faithfulness is your blood on that doorpost. And you want to do that. You know, we do pick it up at the post office box as well. We do have Cash App. We have a Cash App tag where they can send it in. And I will tell you here now, I know beyond the shadow of a doubt that God has blessed us. And I also think what God is answering my prayer. God is bigger than this pandemic. And we don't need to go down in a pandemic just because it's tough. And I think there's a lot of prematurity in us cutting back on a lot of things. I think that we should cut back on a lot of social things and being together in groups and so forth. There are a number of things that we need to do, but we don't need to talk about cutting back in expenditures and so forth, because God has the capacity to bless abundantly above and beyond. My mind is saying, pandemic, we going to the next level. Okay? And so the crisis is initiating for us it's initiating for us what's necessary now and for what's later, because there's some things we would never do if we hadn't have had the crisis. And there's some things that we will need to continue to do. Now, they just announced in South Atlantic that we're going back in our churches on the 6th of June. Okay, so we're going back in our churches on the 6th of June. And last night, and I felt like something like this was coming, we put together our committee for reopening the church. And I know that there'll be a number of people who will not be able to come to our church because a number of them are senior and they fall in that vulnerable category. But the truth is now we need Zoom. And when we get in that church, we're going to need some Zoom some more. Because look at this, Jesse. One of the powerful and beautiful things that we have experienced as a result of having Zoom and where people can be on the line. I got a lady, the same lady that they fix that ramp for. She's got to go to dialysis on Sabbath. But she calls me up. She said, Pastor, I heard you preaching. She can be online. I've got a lady who's in hospice and her children put her online. And there are a number of people who couldn't come to church anyway, but they get to be involved in church because we're now out there where they can get to us, whether they can get to us physically or not. Okay. Immediately when the pandemic hit, we went to phone conference, church. I've got one word for this: awful. Okay?
Now explain what you mean. You mean that instead of using Zoom initially, you just tried to do a conference call.
Right. We did the conference call thing. If it was awful, that would be a promotion. I mean, it would be a wonderful promotion. It was terrible because we had no control over stuff. And it started screeching and people. And so we moved to Zoom. Okay. We moved to Zoom. That's better, but it's not enough. Okay. Zoom has helped us. It's great, but it's not enough. I'm not a tech buff. But I have got to become a tech buff. Why? Because I've got to serve my people. And we've got to get out there where we're not streaming online, but we got to get there. Where we are streaming so that we can get to our people. And the message has got to go no matter what. So God has provided a means for us to do what he has for us to do in spite of the crisis that we are dealing with. And listen, there is never a time when I should not be reaching for the next level and then the next level and the next level. That's not just in numbers or growth in tithe, in ministry, in service, in evangelism, in the whole works. And I can tell you right now, if you're looking down at the bottom of the screen, you see NLM, Next Level Ministry. That ain't my business. That's my philosophy for life. Okay? We're going to the next level no matter what. And by the way, not only no matter what, no matter who. Yeah. We're going to the next level, all right? And then we cannot lose perspective on the God factor in a crisis. God is in charge, and he's bigger than this pandemic. And if he wants you, he gonna get you. If you think you can outrun this coronavirus, I got news for you. You can stay in your house and still get it. And God can help you if he wants you to have it. He's in charge. But Jesse, let me just say this. I'm not great. I've never pastored anything but small churches. I've pastored some larger than this, but small churches.
Mhm.
But let me just say this to you. God has answered my prayer. And I ain't through praying.
Mhm.
We got another level we got to get to. I cannot allow a crisis to dictate where I go for the cause of God.
Mhm.
I will not do that. Now, if he wants to take me down, that's his business. But
Mhm.
I am climbing to the next level by the grace of God. So I'm asking the questions now. Okay, God, what are you saying to me in this crisis? He's speaking to every one of us. And what he really wanted is we had our ears on, but we didn't have our antennas up.
Mhm.
And God is speaking to us in this antenna. We have been, kind of que sera, sera, what will be, will be. But God wants us to get intense and passionate, not to the place where we're killing ourselves, but where we are determined that through his power, we can go to the next level. God, what are you requiring of me? He requires of me next level. That's what he requires of me. All right. And so I'm open for experience and growth. I'm open for experience and next level. And if a crisis is what it takes to take me there, I'm gonna say thank you, God, because you could have just let me go, wiped me out, and sent me to hell. But you brought a crisis to me so that I could go to the next level. Not necessarily bigger, okay? I don't care. I don't care what anybody says. I got a great church. Everybody want to talk about, man, this size church, that size church. I don't care where you are. Let me tell you what I know. I know the Holy Ghost is with me.
Mhm.
How do I know it? Because I just asked him, and he promised he would, and I claim it and I declare it. I don't have to be big. I do have to be better. I
Mhm.
do have to go to the next level by the
Mhm.
grace of God. And
Mhm.
I got to remember, this is not about Steve Ruff. It's not about him. Abraham declared, I gave you verse 1, now I'm going to give you verse 8. Abraham said, my son, God will provide himself a lamb for the burnt offering. God is bringing his people into standards of faithfulness. God is moving them to higher levels of service and meeting the needs of people. But he cannot take them there if I'm not there.
Mhm.
And he's got to get them there, and he does that through leadership. Let me give you this. I got to give you this one. Have not I commanded
A
you?
couple of questions. Go ahead.
Have not I commanded thee? Be strong and of a good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, even in the midst of a pandemic. Why? For the Lord thy God is with thee, whithersoever I go.
Mhm.
God will bless you, and you can do great things. Think next level, project next level, have the people see next level. They need to think that you are crazy for the kingdom of God, for the glory of God, and for the coming of God.
Good stuff. Couple of things, Steve.
Okay?
Well, one is the practical question. The first of all, that's an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
The prayer scroll that you have, how long do those names stay on that prayer scroll?
Until we need space for more.
Okay, so you just keep going and going and going and going.
Yeah, until when we need space for more, then some that have been on there the longest come off. But we'll leave everybody on until we need more space. But we'll keep them there. And it doesn't mean because we archive our prayer requests, so and we keep it lifted up all the time. We sometimes just say, Lord, the prayer scroll, because
Yeah.
you can't call all the information out. But for them to see their name on there,
Yeah.
it's huge.
What do you do? You've been, you're a hardworking guy, and it seems that, well, let me ask a couple of questions because I'm looking at it. One question is, what positive thing and what negative thing have you learned about yourself or your church through this crisis? What
Well,
good stuff, one challenging thing?
Well, one of the if I can be maybe a little bit vulnerable, I've been hesitant to be online for services,
Mhm.
and these past 12 weeks have taught me um, I need to be online for a few reasons. Um, I didn't want to go online because we wasn't sharp, we wasn't tight, and all
Mhm.
the rest of that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
But being online sharpens you and tightens you up. It
Mhm.
it it brings it brings strength to you. And so that's a weakness on my part, but it's also where the pandemic has helped me to learn that being online it is an advantage for me to grow while I'm growing my people. And
Mhm.
so that's the weakness aspect. The strength aspect is that I generally just my concept. You know me.
Your president said you did a fantastic job, man. This was worth the webinar, man.
My president
Yeah,
said
he
that.
did, man.
Oh,
It's like, you're gonna do more. You're gonna do once a week now,
oh, praise God. Um, yeah, will I get a raise? I mean, yeah, yeah. My strength is that I'm a pretty positive guy anyway. Okay, but when trouble comes, I don't like to back down, and I want to take the people to the next level. This church this church last year, this church did 166 Message Magazine subscriptions. I'm sorry, 133 subscriptions, and this year we set a goal for 175. That's just to whoop the pandemic. That's
huh? That's
just because the pandemic and God is bigger, and we know the gospel will go and people will be blessed.
it.
We have commitments. We have commitments right now for 160 subscriptions. Okay, so
Mhm.
we'll probably get to about 200 before it's all said and done. This church raised $40,000 cash to pay for a $35,000 renovation in the church. I meant to have the church behind me so that you could see it, because Jesse, you wouldn't believe it. You've been there to preach enough times, man. And this church is absolutely gorgeous on the inside.
Mhm.
And and
Well,
and
that's one of the things we're going to do a separate. We're going to do a separate webinar on stewardship, on giving, because what's going on at that church is absolutely unbelievable, man. I mean, it was rolling when I was there, and you're saying it's changed since then. And it's not that big a church. But let me ask you this question. This is one of the first questions that came up. You have an amazing work ethic. You had it before you came into the ministry. It's on steroids now. It's just wonderful. What do you say? And you've been in a position of leadership. You were the secretary for the South Atlantic Conference.
right.
There have been a couple of questions about, and I don't want to frame this in a negative way. What if the local pastor doesn't have the type of initiative that you have, and the church members might be getting a little frustrated because they want to do some of the things that you are suggesting and demonstrating, but the pastor might have a different skill set or a different type of mentality?
Yeah. Well, it's gonna be hard for me to talk to that kind of person because I
Yeah,
ain't never been
exactly.
there. But I want to suggest get it. And
Mhm.
why? Because it's the calling on our life. We got to lead people. And if I'm down, how am I gonna get somebody else up? Pray for it. God will give it to you. And believe it or not, man. Um, you know, Jesse. Um, I haven't always been this outgoing. I have been nervous about dealing with people and all that kind of stuff.
That's
Now,
probably
I will
the time
admit
in your life
that
when that
my
was.
19 years as a literature evangelist
Yeah.
taught me. Now the average pastor, I'll give you this, and I'm not going to charge you anything for this one. Okay, the average pastor struggles in the church because they don't want to lose the dignity of being a beggar.
Mhm.
You're not going to be a beggar. You cannot lead your people where they need to go to find God. You you have to beg. I learned this as a call porter. My situation was just a little bit different. Yeah, the word needed to go, but I also needed to eat. You know what I'm saying? Uh, and
But Steve, before you go there, this is the larger question. You're talking to pastors But in this presentation, you're talking to even more non-pastors. You're talking to local elders. And I think you gave a suggestion, but the question is, how do you come alongside and motivate your pastor if he does not seem to be headed in that direction? So your suggestion is that you just, in a tactful way, well, for me, you got to be tactful about prayer, but you just continue to support.
Right. If you have a pastor who's a little more laid back, he doesn't seem to have that visionary element beside him and so forth. Sometimes pastors need pastors, and those pastors can be local elders. In most of my churches, I have had local elders who have pastored me.
Exactly.
Okay?
Exactly.
Okay. I have, and I need that. Okay, that's critical. I just before we got on this, I just got off the phone with my first elder who prayed with me before this presentation and so forth. He is a man of God. Okay, big. And as a local elder, I feel bad because sometimes when you're a local elder, if you find a pastor who finds a little bit of insecurity by somebody having either a good ideal or preaching ability or so forth. I got 3 people in my church. They can preach. They can preach. Okay. And I'm not afraid to sit there.
I know you didn't say they could I preach you. You didn't go quite that far, but go ahead.
Well, they get close.
Yeah.
I just, I got the bully pulpit because it's mine, but they are preachers. But what I'm saying, and Stevie's one of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stevie can go.
Stevie is one of them.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is if an elder finds that a pastor has a little bit of reticence or hesitation and so forth, man, pull up beside the pastor and pray with him.
I love it.
And then share with him, man, listen, tell him he has great gifts. Even the ones you can't see. Tell him he has some ability because everybody's got them. That's what the word of God says.
Yeah.
And be a source of encouragement to your pastor and lift him up. And if your pastor is not right, let him know you love him, but this is wrong. Don't let your pastor do something that's not right. And you sit there and act like it's okay because of his position or his title. And there are many times when I wish I had some do-overs on some things of this magnitude, of this nature. But the truth of the matter is that elders have a calling on their lives, just like pastors have a calling on their lives.
Yeah.
And that calling has to do not only with preaching the gospel, but it also has to do with speaking truth to power. It has to do.
You can keep. I'm gonna change the screen for these last couple of them. See if I can get back to that screen. I want to show them. Here it is. Just want to remind the elders and the pastors, but this was the presentation tonight, how a small church can do great things. If you have any additional questions, we want to make sure that you connect with Pastor Ruff. You can still do it through the chat feature. You can email us and we'll continue to answer your questions. If you become a part of the Elders of Excellence Fellowship, you get this stuff 3 times a month. Next Tuesday, Patty Conwell, who's an associate, I should say an adjunct professor at Oakwood, is going to be doing a presentation on 10 secrets to successful speeches, part 1. Now, this one is geared primarily to leaders and elders that might not be in full-time, every week preaching mode, but you do want to have some basic principles of homiletics, not homiletics, but of public speech. Because the last week of the month, we're going to get into homiletics again with Dr. Keith Morris and Gamal Alexander, preaching machines, and they are going to take us through the development of sermons and sermonettes, where we first go to the most important source, which is the Word of God. So it's going to be some good stuff. All this month, we want you to be connected to these webinars sponsored by the Elders of Excellence Fellowship. I think, Christian has probably put the link up so that if you're not a part of the fellowship, you can become a part of the fellowship, and you're going to really enjoy it. Steve, any last words, man? This thing was a blessing, man. This thing was, as a matter of fact, let me tell you now, I need to get a commitment from you because we haven't come close to some of the questions. I think you need to get into your relationship with your pastor when you were an elder. That's one thing that has been very valuable to me as a pastor. You were one of the most supportive local elders that I ever knew before you went into full-time pastoral ministry. And I like some of the principles that you learned about being in the second chair. And then another thing I want you to do a presentation on is this whole issue of stewardship. But anyway, we've got time in future webinars. But any last words?
Well, I want to say thank you for the opportunity. It's been a privilege, and I am just grateful for God. I'm grateful for the privilege of ministry. I'm grateful for the South Atlantic Conference, for the leadership that we have here that allows, some latitude for doing some things. And I just want to say that I really don't want to get it deep into about where I am. I want to be deep into about what I'm doing for the cause of God and righteousness. Not where I am, not who I am, but who is with me and who makes me who I'm supposed to be.
That's good stuff. Well, listen, man, why don't you close out with prayer again, everyone? This same time next week, 7 o'clock Central, we're going to be doing our next webinar. And then the last Tuesday of the month, same time, 7 o'clock Central, you'll see the announcements. If you want to become a part of the Elders of Excellence Fellowship, you get all of this and the recordings. But these webinars are free to everybody in the month of May. Bishop, thanks again, man.
Thank you.
Why don't you close out with, tell Diane I said hello too, and close out with prayer.
All right. Thank you so much. God, thank you for bringing the pandemic so that we get a chance to see ourselves and watch you care for us in the midst of it. Now give us a mindset that places you in charge no matter the circumstances and takes us to the next level for your glory, for your kingdom, for your coming. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Steve.